There are countless crime series, but none hit quite like The Sopranos. The show introduces us to Tony Soprano, a character who's impossible to pin down, a man torn between his role as a family man and his loyalty to the mob. But the real question is, what's going on in his head? Is he just a product of his world, or is there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? In the world of crime, power is everything. But for Tony, it seems to have a different meaning. His rise to power wasn't the usual route. Either you take out your boss or get officially named as the boss. Tony's approach was a bit smarter. He figured out how to take control of the DeMeo crime organization without making himself a target for the feds. This kind of thinking showed how much the guy valued his life, balancing the delicate line between power and survival in the criminal world. But that is just the beginning. Once Tony got to the top, he stuck with a leadership style that was as much admired as it was feared. He kept his guys close, but he also made sure they knew exactly where the line was and that crossing it wasn't an option. So why take that approach, you might ask? Simple. It made sure he was both loved and feared, the perfect mix for staying in control in the chaotic world of organized crime. It was more like a hands-on style where the guys always knew where they stood. To be honest, the method is an essential asset in the criminal world where misunderstandings can lead to deadly consequences. However, that's not the only method Tony had up his sleeve. He also had this behavior of making tough decisions no matter how they implicated him. This is evident with how he didn't hesitate to cut ties with Christopher, his protege. To Tony's eyes, Christopher had begun to become a liability to the family business. So, in order to show his leadership capability, the guy chose to prioritize the family's interests over personal relationships, and decided that it was better to lose an arm than the whole body. It's pretty interesting, right? But if that intrigued you, wait until you hear of how he dealt with his threats. When it comes to threats, the crime world takes it as a norm. It's just like sleeping and waking up. You can get threatened even if you have done something great, as long as you are in the crime society. For Tony, threats came in different forms, and surprisingly, he dealt with them as they came. He always had this tendency of showcasing the true usage of power psychology. The guy wasn't shying off from using violence as threats as long as he got what he wanted. However, when the situation seemed out of hand, he had some additive tricks in his basket that tackled the situation perfectly. There's this incident where he was dealing with Alan Sappinsley, a wealthy lawyer who seemed to outsmart Tony's conventional means. However, it didn't take long before Tony adapted to the situation and thought of a strategic method to solve him once and for all. So guess what Tony did? Well, he decided that since Alan was a lawyer and he always cared about the people, he would use the same people to disrupt his life. Tony's method just showed the extent of which power can be used. It's not all about the brute force. A little bit of intelligence is enough to outsmart your opponents and hit their weak spots. Now, you might see Tony as the real kingpin with these traits for solving problems as they came his way. However, his methods were more like a double-edged sword. They also came with their own disadvantages. While his leadership in the DeMeo family was effective, there were times that it led to the state of learned helplessness among his followers. What do I mean by this, you may ask? Well, the leadership provided Tony with extreme loyalty from his followers. But if the leader is incapacitated, it could easily lead to chaos among the family, as seen when Tony was in a coma. It's quite intriguing, right? However, this is just a drop in the ocean of what was happening in Tony's life. Apart from his gang family, Tony had a real family in which he had another identity, Tony the father and husband to Carmela. They had 2 children, Meadow and Anthony Jr., to whom Tony didn't seem to commit much time. He had a tendency to focus heavily on his gang family, forgetting that his real family also needed a share of his love. But that's not all. His marriage was in an even more disturbing position. It was balancing on a thin line filled with tension as Tony struggled to balance his loyalty to both his wife and his extramarital affairs. However, that wasn't the real drama. His relationship with his mother, Livia, was a nightmare. His mother was so manipulative and always ready to stir trouble in Tony's life. Now look at that combo of 2 families and a mom who was stressful. Who could survive that? No wonder Tony's life always seemed messed up from the start. His mom seemed more like a tick. She couldn't go away until she had drained her host. It's through these complex interactions that we get to know what really Tony passes through as he struggles with his psyche. However, Tony's character can't just be described by mere family relations. What truly draws us in is his battle with his inner demons. Throughout The Sopranos, we delve into his personal struggles and vulnerabilities. Those 50-minute sessions with Dr. Jennifer Melfi go beyond typical therapy. They act as mirrors, reflecting Tony's self-loathing, fear of death, and obsessive need for control. But still, therapy isn't always straightforward. Dr. Melfi occasionally finds it challenging to maintain professional boundaries and gets somewhat emotionally involved, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. But Tony's mental struggles don't just impact his therapy sessions. They seep into every facet of his life. His relationships, decisions, and even his criminal activities are all influenced by his battles with anxiety and depression. The show doesn't simply attribute his issues to his job. It explores his troubled past, dysfunctional family dynamics, and traumatic childhood to provide a deeper understanding of how his history shapes his current life. Just when you think you have Tony figured out, he complicates things with his role of violence. In Tony's world, violence is often used as a means to gain and retain power. You can see how he and his crew use physical strength and the threat of violence to assert dominance. It's a constant battle for control, not just over their criminal empire, but also over their personal lives. Interestingly, this need for control extends to Tony's family life too. While he never physically abuses Carmela, he uses displays of dominance and threats to maintain power over her. It's a chilling reminder of how deeply ingrained this behavior is in his psyche. But that's not all. Violence also serves as an emotional outlet for Tony. In the high-stress world of organized crime, physical aggression becomes a way to release pent-up emotions. However, The Sopranos uses violence as a narrative device to examine the character's moral codes and beliefs. There is a darkly comedic aspect to this. In one scene, Tony lectures Christopher about drug addiction while they're disposing of a body. It's a perfect example of the show's exploration of moral ambiguity and the consequences of violence. But we can't solely blame Tony. His violent tendencies didn't come out of nowhere. They're a product of his upbringing and environment. The series delves into how this cycle of violence is passed down through generations. Children witness and internalize their parents' violent behaviors, perpetuating the cycle. This learned behavior has far-reaching consequences. It impacts Tony's relationships, creating barriers to emotional connection. It's a stark reminder of how trauma can lead to a breakdown in communication and trust. In the end, Tony's relationship with violence is complex and multifaceted. It's a tool, an outlet, and a learned behavior all at once. Understanding this aspect of his character gives us a deeper insight into the psychological complexities of this iconic TV antihero. Well, that marks the end of today's video. We hope you liked and enjoyed it. On your way out, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more videos like these. Till next time.